Here's how you're going to create a fuzzy fabric texture in under 5 minutes of your time in Blender. Alright, we're here in Blender and the first thing you want to do is obviously add a fabric texture to the base of your object. You can go into Google or whatever browser you use and search for PBR textures. I'll still link a website down in the description below for the people who are not bothered. So now what we're going to do to actually create the fuzz is add a particle system. You can do that in the particle systems tab. You can click on the plus and there we go, we got particles. But this is not what we want, not a bunch of halos flying around. We actually want hair, and we can do that by clicking hair. And now we have 4 meter long strands. For some reason that's the default, but we'll set it to a way lower value, for example 0.01 in my case. Now the number, don't change it just yet because we are going to add children objects later on. So right now, don't worry because we cannot see anything. So how do we fix that? We need to add more particles to the actual hair. And we can do that using Blender's Children. Scroll down until you find the Children's tab and you can click on Simple. Over here, change the display and the render amount to the same value. You can set it to anything. In my case, it was 25. Remember, whatever suits your scene. So now what we need to do is, as you can see, the hair lengths are pretty uniform to each other. We can change that using the length slider. In my case, I went with a value of 0.3 and it looked perfect. So now what we're going to do is actually texture the hair. Now usually Blender uses the default base texture as the hair's texture, but in reality we have all the subsurface scattering and blah blah blah. We shouldn't get into the science, all we care about is the art. So how do you actually do that? Well, you're going into the shading tab. In the shading tab, also on the right hand side, add a new texture, name it whatever you want. I'm gonna name it hair because it's hair, and we're going to delete the principled BSDF. Instead, we're going to add a principled hair BSDF. Who would have thought? We're gonna plug in the BSDF into the surface, and now as you can see, the default color is actually brown. But if we go into the particle systems and we go into the render tab and set the material to the actual hair texture we created, now it's actually gonna be applied to the hair. Now we're going to click on the color, eyedropper tool, and choose a very light color from the base. That's because fuzz is usually lighter than the actual base color and all that stuff. Now what we need to do is actually alter the shape of the hair. Right now it's just sticking out all uniform and straight. So what we can do is under the children's tab, there's something called clumping. And clumping is what it is. It's basically the grouping of the hair. I could change the clump value. For me, a 0.05 value suited me the best. You can also turn on clumping noise and change the clumping value to anything that suits your scene. For me, it was 0.25, but for you, it will be different. This just adds a little more detail to your hair. Scroll down and you can see the roughness tab. Obviously, this just adds a little more variation to the hair. Obviously you can change this to whatever you want. I just went with the 0.01 value. Now for the final thing, the cherry on top, we need to add a little more personality to the hair. Not just crazy everywhere kind of personality, a specifically suited style. In usual cases, fuzz is usually curly and kind of curls in on itself, and we can do that by going into the kink tab right below the roughness tab and changing the kink type to curl. Obviously mess around with all the other types, but in this case this is what seemed best. Right now it's gone crazy, it's all messed up. So how do you change that? Well, you can easily alter that using the amplitude of the curl value. In my case, I went with a 0.05, and it still looks a little crazy, but trust me, when you render it out, it'll look awesome. And that was it for today's tutorial. Make sure to subscribe, hit that like button and the notification button, and I'll see you in the next awesome Bitter Butter Render Blender tutorial.